Hello and welcome to another episode of the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast with me, Karen Maloney. Joining me on today's show, I have Anna O'Dixon. Anna is a teacher of meditation, mindfulness and art. She is also an artist, an author, acupuncturist and a quantum biofeedback practitioner. Anna works privately from her office and clinic in Claremorris Natural Therapy Centre at a Haina Organic Farm near Claremorris in County Mayo. Dedicated to lifelong learning, Anna has been steadily pursuing a distance learning postgraduate doctorate PhD programme in natural and integrative medicine with the International Quantum University of Integrative Medicine since 2016. She hopes to have completed her dissertation and graduate by the end of 2020. Anna has also recently self-published her first book, Mindfulness in the Raja Sutras, a simple guide to understanding the mind during meditation practice. It is available to order on Amazon in printed form and very soon on Kindle. I had a wide-ranging conversation with Anna and we touched on lots of different topics, including mindfulness, meditation, human evolution and what it means to evolve. Anna believes that we all have our own innate inner healing system that needs to be consciously reawakened. And it's fascinating to hear her explain some of the philosophies of traditional Chinese medicine and how the free flow of energy through the body is crucial for good health and balance. It was a thoroughly enjoyable conversation with lots of big concepts broken down. So I'm sure you'll get some nuggets from it. Anna, thank you so much for joining me on today's show. You're very welcome.
It's a pleasure, Karen. Thank you for having me.
Lots to talk about today, I think. You have various different qualifications in between acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine and quantum biofeedback practitioner. You're a teacher of meditation and mindfulness and art and all these amazing, all these creative avenues. So lots to talk about today and we'll see what direction it takes. But I'm really interested to know, first of all, where did it all start for you? Or because I know you're doing some of these modalities, over 20 years. So what kind of led you to this work or were you curious about some of them? Or how did it all start?
Oh, well, it's a good question because it's a good, well over 40 years ago, actually, I started meditating. So it's kind of become a part of my everyday life. And I always had an interest in, I suppose, exploring consciousness. And exploring beyond the confines of what would be kind of limited belief systems. And all the time I knew that there was something just a little bit more in life to be experienced other than the kind of, the humdrum of, 9 to 5 and doing. So, I started meditating from a very young age. I was 13 when I first got initiated or looked into different types of meditation. And from there, I've just continued to explore because it's become part of the way I think and the way I understand and perceive life and understand life from a very young age. And it's developed from there.
That's amazing that you started at 13. And how did you come across it? Because obviously, the internet wasn't around then. It's a relatively new phenomenon. And I suppose for a lot of people, that would be an easier way for them to come across it and start to practice. So how did you first come across it when you were 13?
Well, I think it was probably influenced by my parents who were a little bit, less than conventional. And we grew up, my mum is Swedish, and she was still living in Ireland at the time. We were, we moved around a lot with my father's work. So I suppose we were exposed to lots of different types of people and, internationally as well. So, with that kind of cultural exposure in my own upbringing, I was, I just came across it really.
Yeah.
And I was a very avid reader from a very young age as well. So I had read some very interesting books that, automatically, it was kind of, when it's kind of put in front of you and it didn't seem unnatural to me, whereas maybe it is, more unusual for other people. But I suppose the books were there to read. My parents were good readers and, writers, and that's the kind of the family I came from, I suppose.
Great. Yeah. Love that. And that's really interesting as well, the cultural exposure you mentioned. And definitely, I think it's vital. And I know from myself, when I kind of fell into traveling, I had never planned to, I suppose 13 years ago, I did my first trip. And that was one of the biggest things, about it, that it does open your mind to new things and new ways of thinking and new ways of doing things. And then, I know for me, it was like, oh, maybe everything's not as I think, how it was. So that's really interesting as well. And I think there's huge value in that and having that kind of exposure. Absolutely.
And I do think the world has opened up so much more since I was, a teenager. And, my son is on a skiing trip in Spain with the TYs from Clamorris here at the moment. And, both my children have travelled abroad from a very young age. So it's like their expectation of, cultural differences are, minimal, because and that kind of open-mindedness that comes from exposing oneself to, different types of cultures really broadens the outlook on life and, gives you a different level of values and expectations and interests, I suppose.
Totally. There's, there's always something it's like that thing, we're always teachers and students. So there's always something to be learned and shared, between everybody. And, I think as well, the more you explore and the more you go into that, and down to the depths, you're like, oh, actually, we're all the same. We're all in and of the same and everything as well. And it gets rid of a lot of the barriers. So, it is, I think it's highly important as well that there has been, so much more community and conversations and that opening up around it. And we see it here in Ireland as well. We have how many different nationalities now in among our communities, and it's fantastic. Whereas before, and through no fault, it's just like you say, travel wasn't as accessible. People didn't move around as much as well, that we were just kind of in our own little group. Absolutely. So it's nice that things open up and, that the world opens up as well. And we have those interrelationships.
Plus the fact that the internet as well has given us a massive exposure to, things that, if you didn't read about them, you were in existence. So, the internet is a bit like we live in a very global community in our mindset these days.
Yeah.
Whereas, 20, 30 years ago, it was like you had to travel to meet that, a different type of mindset.
Yeah.
So, and I suppose living in cities as well, you're exposed to, a very wide genre of people and, cultural activities as well. So
interesting. We went off on a bit of a tangent there, but it's all very interesting that. But one word as well that you mentioned that I just absolutely love as well in the name of the title of the podcast, consciousness. And it's something, I constantly try to live by and evolve and raise my consciousness. What does consciousness mean to you? And how, I suppose, do you kind of incorporate it in your daily life?
Big question.
Yeah.
Consciousness is the ground for everything in my world.
Yeah.
And, it's been having a kind of a conscious awareness. I always seem to bridge the word consciousness and awareness. And I try to bring that into a kind of a wholesome unit within my everyday life. Yeah. And there's things like the subconscious, the unconscious, the superconscious. There's all these, acronyms that, what I mean, or adverbs that, work together. But what I feel is possibly the biggest learning for myself is to be in consciousness and awake in it, as opposed to being asleep.
Yeah.
do you get me drift?
Absolutely. Yeah. And just, I suppose for people listening who maybe they might not understand, the consciousness versus asleep. I think a lot of people, we often think, oh, well, I'm here, I'm living, I'm moving, I'm going to my job, my 9 to 5, my dropping the kids off school, come back, whatever. I am awake. But actually, I think once you go into and explore actually what being awake means, you kind of realize that maybe I'm actually on autopilot.
Yeah.
So can you explain a little bit more about that, kind of, what that awareness and that consciousness kind of entails in a daily life?
Okay, well, if you want to put it, the way I'd put it all together for, if I was explaining it to one of my clients, say, I'd be inclined to express it. It's like, at what point do you feel very relaxed? And where, if there's stress in the body or stress in the mind, and you're struggling to, move on to the next thing, where there might be kind of an underlying anxiety about, or worries, and, being, I suppose, trying to survive our emotional stressors and workload. And it's very hard and difficult, with difficulty switching off from that. That can drain your energy, whereas it's that point you go to sleep and you can drift from a mind space where, thinking, and you drop into a kind of a theta state, which is, that kind of relaxed state where you can just be totally yourself and not be, be in the state of doing or thinking or having to plan, and that detracts us from our mindful state, which is pure consciousness.
I love it. Yeah, and you mentioned clients and that, so we'll talk a little bit about some of your work. And when you just finish there with the word mindfulness, like that as well, it is bringing in, that awareness, I suppose, like you mentioned already, and that consciousness into our daily lives. I imagine you probably carry mindfulness all day, every day through your different activities, or if you fall out of that or fall out of alignment, you can recognize it quickly and kind of get back in there. For anyone who maybe doesn't know mindfulness or how to start or have a mindfulness practice, are there any kind of tips or advice that you could give on how someone can begin to be more mindful in their day-to-day actions?
Yeah. Oh, I think from the very simple and natural point of view, mindfulness is being aware that the mind is to be harnessed and used, that you are not your mind. Sometimes we're so caught up in our everyday thinkings that we forget that actually we're in charge.
Yes.
And it's that choice and that awareness that we have that choice not to get caught up in the drama of life, but to step back and say, well, am I choosing this from a consciousness level, or am I going, as you mentioned, Karen, autopilot? And it's this subtle practice of being mindful and stepping back from, the autopilot, that we learn to become mindful. And that's in the simplest way that I can explain it. And it's that choice, it's that free will that we have inherent in our own integrity. And from there you start building a mind. There's many different practices, many different types of meditations, or whether it's down to walking, it could be running for the next person, it could be mindfulness through painting, through drawing, baking. Some people it's even cleaning floors or windows. You know what I mean, or gardening, or the most natural activities. And it's being able to choose to do them from a place of choice, and not having to do it and being prisoner to your own mind, I suppose. And that's the mindfulness, is having the awareness that the mind is a much bigger expanse, and there's an art to managing the mind. And I think that's the practice of mindfulness, and it's a practice, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is a practice. And it's interesting. Yeah, and I agree as well. It totally is a choice that we make, whether our minds are, when our minds are in charge of us, we're kind of blind. We don't see it. But again, it's through that mindfulness and that awareness and kind of catching ourselves that then we can begin to create some space and start to see that, you know, we are in control of our mind, and then try and kind of not step ahead of it, but get around it in that way to just create that space and that gap that you can see that actually I do have a choice. And like you say as well, being able to switch off from the autopilot, so to speak, and to switch into that present awareness. And I remember years ago reading a book about Ram Dass, one of the spiritual teachers, and he used to even break it down as well, so simply, like you were saying, in the natural activities, that if you were washing the dishes, he's like, repeat in your head, I am washing the dishes, I am washing the dishes, I am washing the dishes. Or if you're in the shower, I'm in the shower, I'm in the shower, I'm in the shower. So again, it's like dropping you into that very present moment, the right there, the right now. That's all you're thinking about. So your mind can't wander and be a million steps ahead and thinking about what needs to be done and all the washing and all this and all that, or thinking from the past. And it's powerful. And I think sometimes, you know, we don't give it the credibility and the power that it actually deserves. And I know myself at one stage, I thought I was present, you know, and living. And it was only once I started to create this space and awareness and notice, I was like, oh my God, I was anywhere but in the present moment. Yeah.
It is a day-to-day practice, Karen.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I say that I'm doing 40 odd years of, you know, practice, and, you know, I've integrated it into my everyday life, but I'm not always there for sure. Yeah. It's a day-to-day practice. I can go offside, and it was like, it's just with time and with practice, you become aware when you're offside. Yeah. And that's it's building a kind of a new groundwork. And what I like and I find really a nice way of expressing it is to come from that pure heart space. And that's who I am fundamentally, is inside my heart space. And that's the part of ourselves, the vulnerable part of ourselves that we try to protect from the world. Our mind tries to manage that and pulls us out of that space. So it's about finding that balance between the heart space and the mindfulness, the mind space. So we need to first learn about the nature of the mind and how to harness it properly. In a lot of the yoga traditions, they call it the monkey mind, because it behaves quite like a monkey. It's up and down the tree and in and out. So it's like, it's about arresting.
That's a good analogy.
I know, and put manners on the monkey, like, do you know what I mean? Because it likes power. And it likes to take that power and assert itself so that you become nearly prisoner of your own mind. And that's the practice of mindfulness teaches us fundamentally, is to find that freedom that we have back in our own heart space. It's in that childlike quality that we all possess inside. And it's but without being childish. We need to master the mind in order to live free, happy, adult and fun lives.
And it's so true. And like that, listed again, it sounds so basic and simple, which at the end of the day it is in one sense, but it's just like you say, it's a practice to get there. And once you get it and you click into it, it is much easier, and it's a daily thing to kind of build on and to keep, you know, working at, like you say as well. It's like a muscle, you know, you have to keep working it. If you, use it or lose it.
Lovely,
And like you say as well about, you know, our minds are so incredibly powerful, but they are, you know, it's a survival tool. The power of the mind, it is to keep us, I suppose, alive. And it always relates to things in the past. And that's why often if we're feeling that vulnerable, you know, in that vulnerable space, like you said, in that heart space, it will try pull us out, because I suppose it's an unknown as well, that, you know, and again, that doesn't work too well with the mind, because it likes to be able to dictate and predict and plan and know. And like you say, you know, life happens and we fall in, we fall out. But with the awareness and kind of building the practice, it does get easier in that. And then once, I think, like you mentioned as well, coming from the heart space, then backed up with the mind is a really, really powerful place to be as well. And like freedom, as you mentioned as well, comes into play. Such
and balance is the key. I mean, in my personal experience and my understanding, and through, you know, having read quite a lot of literature and, you know, doctrines and, you know, how-tos and self-help and, you know, psychology and philosophies, you know, they're really all saying the one thing. It's like, you know what I mean? That freedom is innate. It's inside us already. It's in our hearts. Yeah. The mind becomes in and tries to distract us from that. And we get so involved in experiencing the world, inverted commas, that we forget who we really are. And fulfilling that nature, that simple nature within our own core self, in our hearts, it's so important. It's so undervalued. And that's what brings that fulfillment and that contentment to our own experience of everyday life.
Yeah, that's, I think what you said there is really vitally important as well. You know, we do forget who we are. Absolutely. And I think that's part of the journey of life is, you know, we're born and we're taught all these things, you know, conditioning and whatnot. And again, they're kind of survival techniques and we need them until a certain point. But I think often we carry things way longer than we need to. And I can't remember who said, maybe you know, but you know, like that, the journey of life is about learning, and then you have to unlearn everything you learnt, and then you relearn. And that's coming back to your true self, I believe anyway. You know, your authenticity, like that inner truth, you know, the real you that you're talking about there as well. And it's a journey.
Yeah, and we evolve. It's a journey and we evolve as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Throughout life, and there's different stages in life. You know, what was, you know, a very valuable practice for me in my teens was I used to cycle everywhere. Yeah. I'd be on the bike, and that was my, you know, I was creating space in my mind. I was becoming observant. You know what I mean? It gave me a great release of energy. And nowadays, I can't remember the last time I was on a bicycle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was like, then it became running. Now I can't run because, you know, for whatever reason, my age. And, you know, it's like all of these different activities that we take on help us evolve, not only in our mind, but evolve in our souls, in our hearts as well. And I think that's so important, to give yourself that space to evolve as a human being. And perhaps your interests have changed as life moves on. You know, kids grow up, we don't have the same demands, and it's like there's, you know, this is it, we're only getting one, you know, for sure we're only getting one crack at the, you know, at life itself. So it's like, make the best of it.
Totally. And I love that you mentioned that, you know, we are evolving and constantly evolving, and like you say, you know, things change. It doesn't always have to be the same. You find new ways of, you know, finding that space or the peace, or, you know, don't feel bad or guilty if you can't cycle or run like you used to. There's always new ways in our own personal evolution, like you mentioned as well. And I think once we're kind of open to that and just going with it, kind of, it'll bring us where we need to go. Absolutely.
And it's trusting in that, you know, that flow of life. That's what we started off this conversation with, Karen.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, about being able to flow in, you know, we have no script, you know, set in front of us. It's, you know, today we're just having a quick chat around the evolvement of everyday life.
We're trusting and flowing.
And participating. Consciously.
Consciously, yes. Love it. Okay, so as well, mindfulness, powerful technique, and like that, you know, like you've said as well, just in the simplest of ways, and kind of tuning into natural activities that we're doing and just building on that practice and just how powerful it is. As well, you do acupuncture and quantum biofeedback in your clinic. Talk to us a little bit about those. I know they're two very different things, so I'll let you pick.
Well, they are and they aren't. You know, one kind of evolved from the other for me personally. So my original training back, I don't know, I probably started about 25 years ago, training as an acupuncturist. And one of the incentives or the reasons I actually went to train in acupuncture originally was because I was always fascinated by the use of, you know, the medicinal use of herbs from the garden. I liked gardening. I always have done. I've always found it really grounding. then, with the pain, I had a situation that I needed a lot of pain management. So I'd been going for a lot of acupuncture myself because it was the only thing that really, really worked for me. And then later on, I had some chronic health problems that I needed to address, and I used acupuncture and herbal medicine and homeopathic medicine actually with great results. So I continued to train in that field, and I liked the whole philosophy of Chinese medicine. So that gave me, and probably coming from a mindfulness point of view, I always looked at the Chinese martial arts. I had done a good bit of Tai Chi in my teens, and looked at the Qigong, the breath work, and I suppose Oriental medicine. Then later on I got more interested in the yoga and studying the metaphysical sciences, that may be born out of India, that region. But it was kind of a bridging of all of that kind of Eastern medicine, where you're talking about the quantum biofeedback, but the whole premise of quantum biofeedback is based on quantum physics theory, which really explains how the Taoist philosophies that came from China, Japan, from the Eastern, from India, the yoga sciences, they all have a kind of a common, a resonance or understanding for me, in that it's energy-based medicine. Yeah. So the study, obviously, with quantum physics explains how energy works on the physical realm, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, how it works in our environment, in our bodies, through the meridians, chakra systems, to physical organ systems. And at the moment, they're really rewriting biology, for people who are working with natural energy medicine. And this is the ancient medicine before Newtonian medicine, before Western medicine actually took precedence in our societies. But it's kind of moving back into that kind of the natural medicines that, we still have at our fingertips, that we can use and be more proactive with our own healthcare, holistic healthcare, meaning it's not just on the physical level, it's how you integrate that into your everyday life. So that's the approach that I come from with it. And again, it's been a stage of involvement. So I trained in kinesiology, and I didn't sit the final exam because I kind of moved on into kind of, looking at energy development in the scientific community. And that's when I purchased, the quantum biofeedback system. And along with that, I went and I did a lot of training abroad mainly in London, but, in the States and in Hungary, to learn the different systems that, can be integrated together within I suppose at first it was using technology, but it's not just technology, it's inherent in many natural systems of medicine all throughout the world.
Fantastic. A lot of information there, and I'm sure some people may have to go back and listen to that again. Really, really fascinating. So let's just break them down a little bit individually again. The acupuncture, and you mentioned some of that the philosophies of traditional Chinese medicine really attracted you as well in the whole area of homeopathy. So explain to us a little bit maybe about some of the philosophies first, and then we can come after again to the quantum biofeedback and break that down again. But I love how, your story and kind of you're looking at the energy-based medicines. I absolutely love that because, again, we are all energy and everything is all energy. So it's vital. Yeah.
Well, in Chinese medicine, you're looking at the way energy flows through the body mind. So the body doesn't lie, number one. And for good health to occur, you need to have this free flow of energy moving through the body. So the Chinese philosophy would say it's where there's blockage of energy, or where there's been injury, or where there's, would be pathogenic forces that cause these blockages. And then when you free the pathways, you rebalance the system. It comes back into a kind of an inner eco harmony. And for good health to occur, you need this free flow of energy where the interrelating support systems are supporting one another. Yeah. And that would be through the vital organs of the body, the heart, liver, lungs, etc. So where there's disharmony, there's imbalance in the body and in the body mind. So you arrest where the blockage is. It could be a deficiency, it could be an excess, it could be too much heat, too much cold, it could be pathogenic factors. I mean, a whole range of reasons. Yeah. So you're looking at it, first identifying them and then clearing the blockage. Yeah. So the person's immune system can actually go in and mop up whatever needs to be mopped up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're looking at how does the person think, feel, how they are in their physiology, and how they connect also to their environment. So if a person is under constant stress in their environment, it's going to have an impact on their inner health. So it's the basic premise would be as above, so below, and as within, so without. Yeah. So that allows our humanity, our human existence to experience what we would consider both spiritual, emotional, those, the kind of the higher moments of life that actually settle into the physical body. Our physical body is like a reflection of what's going on from around us. So that idea that we're separate from our environment, from our mind, from our, the spirit ancestors who, gave us our DNA. And it's how do we balance that and relate to it and evolve with it. So that's constantly, we're a living organism. That's how I would see the fundamentals of Chinese medicine. Sometimes we need herbs. Yeah. We need good natural herbs that help us on the physical level. They help clear those pathways. They help us stay grounded, and evolving, you know what I mean, and non-toxic as well. I think we live in a very toxic time. So we're learning how to strengthen our system so that we don't take on and store all these toxins. They cause blockages, serious blockages and serious disease. So in a very similar way, quantum biofeedback does the same, but it's working with, we're measuring the EEG, ECG, EMG, with a bioresonance system, and then influencing the free flow of chi energy again to harmonize so that the person themselves can feel that free. Also, gathering information. A lot of it is in the transference of information. So. Yeah.
That is just so powerful and fascinating. And thank you for such a coherent and easy to understand way of describing both principles and especially, the traditional Chinese medicines and the philosophies and that, and basically how it's all about flow and unblocking energies and, that then equates to good health. And like you say as well, then the opposite is true when there's imbalances or blockages. There is a disharmony, a dis-ease within the body. And I love as well the fact that you mentioned, once this is identified and whatever is needed, that the body, the immune system, then goes to clean it up as well. And that's just so powerful because our bodies are so incredible and they are so powerful when we can support them in the right way.
Absolutely. So our bodies need to evolve. They need to be happy as well. There is a fundamental need for contentment and for the experience of joy in our everyday life, and it has been proven, scientifically proven, microscoped, and blood's done and everything, that when a person is more self-contained, grounded in their body and feeling a sense of joy about being alive, that their immune systems are responding in a more positive, and it goes in and it cleans up disease in the body. So it's a very fundamental thing, but it's also an extremely important thing to take ownership of in one's own body.
And I think that's it exactly, taking ownership. And you know, like you even mentioned as well, the interconnectedness of it all. Like when something physical shows up in our body, it hasn't just appeared. It's not just something physical. I love how you mentioned, you know, it's all the different energies and systems, and whether it's, you know, ancestral or like everything is interconnected, that it's not that, you know, that just that thing showing up right there in your body as a physical symptom, that there is a much bigger picture as well going on. Like you mentioned, you know, happiness and fulfillment, there are fundamentals, but often so overlooked. And sometimes, I don't know if we don't give it the credit that actually, and it's not just thinking positive either, it's actually feeling it, you know, within our bodies as well, that actually how important it is and what an impact it does and can have.
Absolutely. There's people, you know what I mean, are really putting up with, you know, conditions in their body due to stress and not having the time, or like the mind will be saying, I don't have the time for that. I don't have the time. And, you know, these stressors are building up, whether it's in the mind or in the body, but there is a certain saturation point. And this is how toxins accumulate and get stuck in the body. And learn, you know, giving yourself that space to go take the walk, take the 10-minute walk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Go paint that picture. You know what I mean? Go for that swim, you know, eat healthy food. And it's like, you know, being able to give yourself that quality of life, those precious moments, that is the reverse of the other, which is, you know, the normal everyday humdrum stressors that we're constantly trying to keep abreast of. Yeah. So it's a subtle change of mindset is required. Mindfulness towards oneself, towards one's, you know what I mean, holistic, health is probably the wrong word, but a kind of a mindset and way of being that actually encourages an experience of being able to wake up in the morning and kind of go, yep, I'm glad to be alive. A lot of people, that's, you know, it's escaping them and kind of going, they're looking for a contentment in some other way, whether it's, you know, in digital messaging or, you know, Facebook or, you know, these
in externals.
Yeah, and there are a lot of distractions. So it's, you know, how do we allow ourselves to be distracted is one of the biggest questions, I would say.
Yeah. So. And again, you know, and I've said it before several times on different podcasts, it comes back, and you've mentioned it as well several times, it is our responsibility. You know, and it is us taking ownership. And like you started out the conversation very much today was about, you know, we are not our mind. You know, we control our mind. They don't control us. And when we do, because I've been there as well, when we are, you know, in that stressed and just going from pillar to post and like kind of in survival mode, it is hard to, you know, although you may feel called to paint a picture or go gardening or take a walk, whatever, it's hard because we often think, if I stop, everything's going to fall apart and I have to keep going. Whereas when we do stop and take that little bit of space and a break, the absolute reverse happens. You know, you know, it seems counterintuitive, but that's when we need to step up for ourselves. That's when we need to take real ownership and responsibility and actually do that thing, or take that walk, or paint the picture, or take 5 minutes and just breathe. Because then it's like that whole thing we've been talking about, the awareness, the consciousness, that space opens, that then you can start to gain some perspective and think, hold on. What is going on here? You know, something needs to change, or actually this is not so important. I don't need to do that. X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. But it's through that kind of, and it's a letting go, like you've mentioned as well, a letting go, a trust, a flowing. You know, that's where the magic is and where it all happens from. But
absolutely
getting
and
there.
That's what I'm saying, in that heart space, it's like that magic is still alive. It's still inside us, and it's like we keep covering it over and over and kind of going, you know, I'm an adult now and I'm supposed to do this, and an awful lot of these are, you know, they're let's say the counterproductive belief systems that have just been accumulating, and often they're, you know, they're obsolete, they're no longer, they're dysfunctional thought patterns, and we're still holding on to them since, you know, maybe our teens or 20s or 30s or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that what you were saying earlier on in this podcast is, you know, we're actually having to unlearn what we did learn and then relearn. But actually it's about that fundamental choice.
Yeah.
And that free will of like, well, actually it's no longer appropriate to hold on to those belief systems. You know, one big one, which is classic, especially in Irish culture, is, oh, life is tough. You know, I mean, where did we get this impression from? You know, and we confound it then to experience it to be real. And that's a fundamental thought pattern. It's like, if I believe something to be true, I must prove it to be true. And real and realize it. So it's like adopting new and more beneficial and functional thought patterns requires a kind of a discernment, and the opportunity that we give ourselves to be discerning is what we learn through the study of consciousness and a practice of mindfulness. And, you know, generally, you know, good living, how would you say, conditions and behaviors.
Yeah, and I love that, you know, these themes, even, you know, as the weeks go on and I'm speaking to different people, these, like you say, they're fundamentals that are underneath it all. So it's great to like rehash it and hear it from a different way, because it's like we're saying the same thing in lots of different ways. Like, and I do believe like there's definitely a huge shift going on and things are speeding up. You know, I see it even among, you know, my own groups or contacts or family or friends or whatever. You know, there definitely is an opening and a bit of a shift, because people can see what's happening and what's going on is not sustainable in any way, shape or form. So I think old systems and beliefs are starting to crack, but that's why now more than ever we need to ramp up the conversations and keep it going, because just, you know, to have it out there again that, like you say, it's evolution, it's all normal, it's kind of switching back into finding who we truly are, and it's getting out of our own bloody way. You know? Absolutely. That was me. I was totally freaking blocking myself in every way, you know. And once you get out of that mind and, you know, have it behind you supporting you, it's a totally different ball game. But just as well, because I'm really interested that you're doing in among all these other incredible things you're doing, you're also doing a PhD in natural and integrative medicine, which I just think is like phenomenal. You know, where for you, I suppose, does kind of conventional medicine fit in? Because I suppose we're talking about how interconnected everything is, and, you know, it's not just physical symptoms. There's so much more at play, which often in conventional medicine is not really taken into account. So how does it fit in for you, or how do you kind of see things moving forward, or how does it need to be? Well,
the doctorate program that I'm studying is integrative medicine, meaning that it's not against conventional medicine by any means. And, you know, I think a lot of the younger doctors, consultants, you know, not just in Ireland but worldwide, are much more open to people being proactive with their everyday healthcare. And, you know, I wouldn't be alive today without, you know, the intervention of surgery and, you know, modern medicine. That was part of my legacy coming into this world. And, you know, I've had to find other solutions that supported what, you know, because conventional medicine doesn't have all the answers, you know, especially for chronic type of disease patterns. And it's a bit, you know, the mysterious or the unexplained. So a lot of, you know, I think the way forward in the future, getting straight to the point of your question, is integrative medicine is the way forward. And it would be very much an integrated medical system in China. You have two different floors, one for, you know, Chinese medicine, the upstairs then for the surgeries in a lot of the more modern hospitals. And, you know, it's working with the best of both worlds would be, I would see, is the way forward. And I suppose I lived in Sweden for quite a while, and there you have a very good healthcare system where you have kind of more area-based, you know, medical centres where you have your GPs, you have your dentist, you have your gynecologist, it could be midwife, you know, to fertility clinics, to acupuncturists, homeopaths, physiotherapy, all under the one roof. And to me, it's a logical way forward where people are actually working with the best of, what their system, gives to the patient. Yeah. So it's, first do no harm is Hippocrates' oath. And I would say, for that is you give, and why would anybody become a doctor in the first place or a consultant? Is because they care about the patient welfare. And it's what can we do on a day-to-day level as we evolve, with this super fast age of knowledge, which is what we have at our fingertips. It's how can we best work together? And that's where I feel that integrative medicine is coming into the forefront of it, for patient care.
Yeah. And it's so exciting and so necessary as well. I think, there needs to be that, like you say, integrative approach and complementary in the two-way communication, because each has its place. And you mentioned the word as well, because a lot of, what we're seeing nowadays are chronic issues. They're chronic illnesses. So, they're lifestyle issues, environment issues, nutritional issues, everything all in one. They're not just an acute thing that often, conventional medicine is amazing getting in there in the acute, but that's why then for the chronic issues, there needs to be the bigger picture taken into kind of scope as well. So it's very exciting times. And how are you enjoying it? I just think it's just such a fascinating course. Yeah.
I'm loving it. Now I'm doing it as a distance learning. I think I have to do a couple of modules over at the university. It's the International Quantum University of Integrative Medicine. And it's got, an amazing faculty of people in, different areas that I really admire and I have been following for the last number of years. I think they were originally called the Quantum Academies, and then they set up the university in Hawaii. And it's absolutely fascinating, the amount of, integrative, really core knowledge that's coming into that faculty. Do you know what I mean? Through, I suppose, it's a naturopathy course per se, but it's bringing in the whole scientific evaluation so that, energy medicine practitioners and acupuncturists worldwide, herbalists, nutritionists, dietary therapists. And when you bring it all together, it's an amazing, you really, really learn how wonderful the body is, the mind is, and the connection to the environment, to just life in itself, and it's learning to master certain aspects of my own studies that I've done for the last 20 plus years, and trying to bring it in under one umbrella, but understanding it from a scientific point of view. And I think that's important, and I think that's what the next stage of involvement in natural integrative medicine is. So. Yeah,
that's amazing. And so I suppose you kind of mentioned there, so when you were talking there, I was thinking, wow, well, obviously through all your qualifications and your work over the last, 20 years in acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, bioquantum feedback and all that, and the mindfulness even, what more can you learn? You must know a lot about, and we've already spoken about it, you've mentioned about the interconnectedness and, the quantum physics and how it's all interrelated and plays a part. But obviously from this course as well, like you mentioned there, it's that next level of maybe the scientific research as well. Is that what it's bringing in for you, or is it just giving you, I don't know, like a bigger, more expansive picture again?
I think that all of the above, actually, because it's like there is one part of me that's extremely logical and factual based. I like facts because there's no. It's either that or it's that, and it's like there's no grey area, and that kind of, you can spend a lot of time kind of wondering whether or not, and when you go on the internet or even WD Med or whatever it is, it's like I got pretty disillusioned there a number of years back, and it was like, I was kind of going, oh my God, is it all about, say in the world of food and diet and that? And it's like one person say avocados is a good thing, and another person say avocados, but there was no right or wrong way. And I was kind of going, this is a big muddle of information, and it's what you take of it. So that propelled me to look at, well, actually, what are the facts here? You know what I mean? What is a toxin? What is a known toxin? What is unknown toxin? To, how is this, deteriorating? Is this the truth? Is this not the truth? You've got the FDA saying one thing, you've got the Irish Medicines Board saying another thing. Perhaps it could be the World Health Organization. They're saying, well, actually, this is a level of this that's acceptable. And then they and then you got, a whole band of other countries that, bans fluoride from their water. And yet in Ireland, they're saying it's okay. And you kind of go, but actually, when you look at the scientific evidence, actually, it's not okay.
Yeah.
In terms of, what I mean, in the studies, say for Alzheimer's, disease or Parkinson's, whatever it is, do you know what I mean? You're looking at, well, actually, no, there are facts and there are policies and there are group bodies that, one is, counteractive to the other because it's a big competition, and a lot of it becomes, it's very confusing for the everyday person.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest reasons why I decided to go on and do a further level of study. And I said, well, actually, it's learning how to analyze stuff scientifically. You have to work. I'm not against, pharmacology, far from it. I do think that, in the development of pharmacology, they need to put more money into research. That's personally what I think. Yeah, that's my own personal opinion. Yeah. And I know there are many drug companies that are putting money into it, but there's a lot of dictatorship from other government bodies. And this is, what's going on in America versus Russia. I mean, it's a minefield. Yeah. So having a level of knowledge that you can actually discuss this, but I'm doing it more from my own personal knowledge. I like learning. Yeah, I'm not doing it to, just to have another certificate in the wall. I don't care about that. I don't even hang the certificate. I have a couple of, you know what I mean? It's not that. It's for my own interest. And I like this evolvement of consciousness, and I like where people are being given the best treatment that they can get. Yeah. And the patient care and humanity can evolve, you know what I mean, to the next level. Do you know what I mean? Where people don't have to be, if you need an antidepressant or whatever it is, you take it for the period of time, but looking at getting beyond to the next level. Yeah. He's looking at the emotion. How do we help people with their, their mindsets, with their emotions, with, their physical difficulties? It's like the best of patient care is what we need. Humanity does need to evolve. There's too much sadness in the world. Yeah. And it's affecting people's health. And I'm going to go, we don't need, we can find other solutions. We're living in an extraordinary time. Absolutely extraordinary, where we have information at our fingertips. The amount of development in medical fields is phenomenal. I think it's, we shouldn't be suffering. Why? It's not necessary when we can take a next step into a kind of a humanitarian consciousness. And I think that's what fires me up anyway.
Very exciting, and you can hear it in your voice as well. So I'm really excited to see what you continue to do, because it's just been really fascinating. And like, you mentioned there as well towards the end, if you need an antidepressant or whatnot, fine, take it for that time. It's until you find the next thing that can bring you to the next level. It's not a thing for life. And I suppose that's where the shift needs to happen as well. That, we need whatever we need at the time, but that doesn't mean that's all we need. And that's what we need to stick to. Then again, it comes back to our level of responsibility, opening up and looking around and see, okay, well, what else can bring me to the next level? What else can help me in my evolution, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, on every level that's outside of this as well. And like I say, I think that's where the exciting space is, and that's hopefully, and I believe as well, the way things are going. So
hopefully, I like your word hopefully. It does bring in more hope into people's lives. Yeah.
Again, it's just opening up. Like, why are we so closed? We absolutely know nothing, and we don't know what we don't know. What I always say is, well, you're not going to know unless you just go out there and open up your mind and just go look. And like you say, I love that you constantly keep learning. It's one thing I completely enjoy as well. And once you get into that kind of frame of mind, it is that constant up-leveling, that evolution. And it's not for any egotistical, well, in my own, and I doubt in yours as well, it's not for any egotistical way, or like you say, for a plaque on the wall or a piece of paper. It's for inside, personally, how I feel, how I think, what's, appearing to me, how I can change and make sense of things and perspective and mindset compared to how I used to be. And it's like, whoa, that's the magic. That's purpose. And feeling a transformation as well happening, that like, wow, okay, there is so much more out here I have no idea about. And that's exciting.
It is exciting. It is. And we all have a purpose.
Completely.
Every single human being come onto this planet, we all can find that sense of purpose and that joy and that fulfillment. That's our birthright. And it's about taking ownership of that birthright. And that's the freedom. Yeah. That's, what I mean, Jesus talked about in the Bible. You know what I mean? Muhammad to, Lord Krishna, all of the great avatars. Yeah. They all talk about the same thing. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's, there's a lot of knowledge here that we can, take from the ages, from history as well, and learn from it. Yeah. And bring it into the future.
Yeah, and explore, get curious, bring it into your own life and see if it works, if it fits. If it doesn't, that's fine. It's not for you. It's not a one size fits all. That's also the beauty of it. It's getting out there and finding what works for each of us individually, to find our flow, to find that freedom, to connect back to our true selves, to see that bigger picture, and to know that, we're not just this physical body having this physical experience. There is so much more going on as well that I find it so fascinating and thrilling and exciting once I kind of switched into it. So Anna, I can't believe how the time has just flown by. Really, really fascinating and interesting conversation. I was going to say any parting words, but I think what you just said is the perfect way to finish as well. So thank you so much for joining me.
Absolute pleasure, Karen.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or Stitcher. Also log on to www.karenmaloneyWellbeing.com and click podcasts for the full show notes and links.